Hello, my name is Kirk Savage. I'm a professor of history of art and architecture at the University of Pittsburgh, and I specialize in the history of public monuments and public sculpture. Whose statues should we preserve and honor? Whose belong in the proverbial dustbin? These questions have become front and center in the past few years as historians and activists and ordinary citizens have openly rebelled against many of the so-called great men of the past, calling them to account for their crimes against humanity and demanding their removal from public space. As an art historian who has tracked these controversies over many years, I've always leaned towards the value of preservation. But my view has evolved in recent years to the point where I now fully support the removal of harmful monuments from their places of honor. Like many other Americans, I've come to see that monuments celebrating the Confederacy or the conquest of native peoples don't belong in the street or the public square any longer, but should be tucked away in museums or archives as historical documents of injustice. However, almost everyone would agree that Nathan Hale is surely not the kind of icon who needs to be toppled. Strangely enough, though, he was hardly an icon at all until late in the 19th century. As late as 60 years after his execution by the British, a U.S. senator from Connecticut admitted publicly that most of his fellow senators would probably ask, "Who is Nathan Hale?" Hale didn't have any statues at all until the late 19th century, when one was erected at the Connecticut State Capitol in 1886, and a second erected here at the Wadsworth Athenaeum in 1893, designed by the local Hartford sculptor Enoch Woods. After 110 years without any statues of Nathan Hale, the race was now on. Towns, cities, states, and even the federal government jumped in to commission or purchase statues of the hero. The celebrated Paris-based sculptor Frederick McMonnies produced a statue for New York City's City Hall Park in 1893 that was later copied and installed in New London, Connecticut. In 1913, Bella Pratt made a statue of Hale for Yale College, and that version has been copied and installed multiple times across the country. All told, there are well over a dozen full-length statues of Hale in the United States by at least 5 different sculptors. Every single one of these statues is a work of artistic license. There were no portraits of Hale made in his lifetime, and no reliable eyewitness accounts of his execution. This gave sculptors a free hand to invent their own man and their own story. McMonnies and Pratt both decided to make Hale a prisoner, with his arms and legs bound. For them, the drama was in how the young Hale bore his fate under physical and emotional strain. But in Enoch Woods' statue at the Athenaeum, Hale appears unbound, a free man stepping into his own chosen destiny. He stands like a sturdy gentleman with his right hand over his heart, making a pledge, his eyes looking upward toward the heavens. There is no hint of the ordeal he is experiencing. Perhaps it isn't surprising that the McMonnies and Pratt versions became more popular and more definitive of the hero, while Woods' version has remained an outlier. The Athenaeum statue transports us back to a time when the Nathan Hale legend was only beginning to take shape, and artists were first jockeying to put his legend into 3-dimensional form. Like most monuments, the Athenaeum statue tells us more about the people who erected it than it does about the hero himself. Yet this is exactly why statues remain so telling, so important, and so problematic. They give us a unique glimpse into how communities make and remake their heroes. The struggle over statues is ultimately a struggle over who belongs in our communities and what those communities aspire to be.